I stood at the back of the ballroom, hands clenched, stomach twisting as Daniel and Maris exchanged vows. Every luxury, every detail, my investment, my lifetime of work had gone into this day. The crystal chandeliers alone cost $40,000. I paid for everything without hesitation because he was my son. Then Daniel raised a glass, looked directly at me, and said, "Dad, you've done enough. Don't interfere in our lives or finances again." The words hit like a hammer to my chest. Shock froze me. The guests whispered, glancing my way, sensing the tension. I had raised this boy, guided him, sacrificed so much, and now he publicly dismissed me. Maris smiled faintly at Daniel. That smile, something in my gut twisted. I had seen it before, calculating, cold, practiced. My mind flashed to a warning I'd recently uncovered. Maris's previous husband's company, a $100 billion empire, had collapsed under her influence. The next morning, I found a cryptic email from Maris. "You'll regret trying to control us. You don't even know what's coming." Back at Lawson Enterprises, my sanctuary, I reviewed a stack of reports Claire handed me. Emails, purchase orders, and internal memos showed Daniel bypassing board protocols, attempting unauthorized control. Maris's signature appeared subtly guiding his hand, encouraging rebellion, leveraging his ego. A wave of outrage and hurt flooded me. My son wasn't just disrespecting me. He was attacking the empire I built from the ground up. I started with nothing, absolutely nothing. Worked 80-hour weeks for 15 years to build this company. Every brick, every contract, every success came from my sweat and blood. I remembered Maris's prior marriage. The $100 billion empire she'd unraveled, leaving chaos and legal nightmares. The patterns were identical. It was clear now. She'd done this before. She thrived on exploiting men's weaknesses and trust. I stared at the corporate charter, realization dawning. There was a legal path, a way to protect the company, my legacy, and teach both Daniel and Maris a lesson they'd never forget. I summoned Daniel to my office. Confidence radiated from him, arrogance personified. But as I laid out each violation, unauthorized contracts, falsified reports, attempts to siphon funds, I watched his smirk fade. Maris hovered near, whispering instructions like a puppeteer. I said calmly, ice in my voice, "You are terminated immediately. Effective today. You have no role in Lawson Enterprises." Daniel's jaw dropped. Maris faltered, the first flicker of fear in her practiced eyes. For the first time, I saw clearly. Maris's second act of destruction was underway. Daniel was her tool. This was her familiar game. Daniel stormed toward the door, face red with rage. "You can't do this. I'm your son. I'll take everything from you. The board will side with me, not some bitter old man." Maris touched his arm, her voice smooth as silk. "Let him make his mistakes, darling. We have other options." I watched them leave, knowing this was only the beginning. The storm had just started. Later that night, alone in my office, I opened Gerald's old safe. Inside, the original will and partnership documents lay waiting. Gerald had been my business partner, my mentor, the man who taught me everything. He trusted me to act decisively if any heir threatened the company. Daniel was named, but I had the power to amend inheritance and shield the company. I felt a mix of vindication and dread. Maris's previous success in dismantling a $100 billion empire loomed large, but now I held the cards. A text flashed on my phone from Maris. "You don't know the lengths I'll go to. Don't think this is over." I smiled quietly. She believed she was still in control. She had no idea how much I'd anticipated her next move. As I organized the will amendments, a shadow of a memory hit me. Documents from her previous husband's company, showing every tactic she'd ever used to manipulate, destroy, and claimed control. I had copies of everything. The next day, Daniel returned, tears in his eyes, pleading forgiveness. Maris stood beside him, orchestrating every gesture, every word, like a seasoned general. I noticed patterns, mirrored behaviors from her past marriage, the subtle gaslighting, the careful framing of Daniel as the victim. I began documenting every move. Emails, contracts, messages, every attempt at deception. Every detail would become proof of their calculated strategy. Then a courier slipped an envelope under my office door. Inside were documents from Maris's past, revealing her manipulations that destroyed a $100 billion empire, the evidence of how she weaponized trust and entitlement to ruin a husband and a company. I realized the scope of what I was facing. Daniel was only the beginning. Maris was the storm. I picked up the envelope with trembling hands. Every secret she'd buried was now mine. Soon, her empire of manipulation would collapse. I spent the rest of the day making copies, organizing evidence, building my defense before she could strike again. Late at night, I accessed the company's private financial ledger, the one Maris believed she couldn't touch. Her fingerprints were everywhere. Subtle transfers, shell accounts, attempts to siphon funds through Daniel. Every entry screamed calculated betrayal. I felt a pulse of rage, tempered by control. I knew she'd done this before. Her prior $100 billion victim left a trail. Tonight, I started tracing the breadcrumbs. Every document, every transaction became a weapon. A flagged account showed a $10 million transfer pending, disguised as an internal bonus. If it went through, the company would suffer catastrophic damage. But I was faster. I called my CFO immediately. Freeze that account. Authorization code 779. Do it now. Within minutes, the transfer was blocked. I saved the transaction details, added them to my growing evidence file. Maris had moved quickly, but not quickly enough. I was learning her patterns, anticipating her next moves. This was war, and I refused to lose. Daniel called, desperation in his voice. He didn't understand yet that I was 2 steps ahead. Every attempt at guilt, manipulation, and false charm bounced off me. Maris hovered behind the phone, whispering, instructing, repeating her old tactics from her previous conquest. I recognized the pattern. Push, scare, threaten, isolate. I recorded the conversation. Every word, every tactic, every attempt to gaslight was now evidence. Dad, please! Daniel's voice cracked. You'll ruin me. Mom, everyone will side with me. You're being unreasonable. I'm your only son. I smiled quietly. He had no idea the storm he was walking into. Daniel, I said calmly, you made your choice at the wedding. You chose her over family, over loyalty, over everything I'd built for you. Now you live with the consequences. I heard Maris whisper something in the background. Daniel's tone changed instantly, became harder, more aggressive. Fine. We'll see you in court then. Maris escalated, emailing the board of Lawson Enterprises, framing Daniel as the visionary and me as the tyrant trying to block him. I read it slowly, noting her language, the same cold, manipulative phrasing that destroyed a $100 billion empire. I prepared a counter-strike. Emails, contracts, past behavior, every move meticulously documented. This wasn't just corporate maneuvering. It was psychological warfare. Claire burst in with a file. Inside were video footage and audio recordings of Maris instructing Daniel to forge approvals. I leaned back, heart pounding. The trap was set. How did you get this? I asked Claire. Security cameras you installed last month, she replied. Every conference room, every hallway. You said to document everything. I nodded slowly. Smart thinking. Make 3 copies. One for my attorney, One for the board, one stays in the vault. Claire hesitated. Sir, are you sure about this? He's your son. He stopped being my son the moment he chose her manipulation over my guidance. I called an emergency board meeting. Daniel sat smug, Maris poised like a lioness ready to strike. I played the footage, slow and deliberate, exposing the exact moment Daniel followed Maris's instructions to manipulate company funds. Gasps echoed around the room. Maris froze, a crack in her armor I'd never seen. The board member's eyes shifted from Daniel to her. This is doctored, Maris said quickly. He's desperate to maintain control. Can't you see that? I played another clip. Her voice, clear as crystal, instructing Daniel to forge my signature on transfer documents. The room fell silent. Explain that, I said quietly. Maris whispered to Daniel. You think you can ruin me? I responded silently, planning the next phase of their downfall. The will amendment was ready. I just needed the perfect moment to execute it. Daniel's face went pale as board members began whispering among themselves. I watched his world crumble, piece by piece, exactly as planned. At my private office, I opened Gerald's sealed instructions. It was time. Daniel was removed from all company shares, all decision-making power. His inheritance, nullified, replaced with a strict clause. Nothing passes until proof of responsible conduct. Maris's eyes widened when she received a discreet notification from my attorney. Daniel's legal claim had been voided. She realized her manipulative play failed here. I felt a surge of vindication and justice, but I knew Maris would retaliate. She was experienced. She didn't surrender easily. Late at night, Maris sent an anonymous tip to the press hinting at scandal at Lawson Enterprises. The media storm was coming, and I was ready to turn it against her. I called my PR team immediately. Prepare a comprehensive statement. Include the fraud evidence, the shell accounts, everything. We're going public before she can control the narrative. My attorney arrived within the hour. Are you absolutely certain about this? Completely, I replied. She's done this before. I won't let her destroy what I built. I sat in my office late at night, staring at financial reports Maris had left on my desk. My heart sank. Lines of numbers didn't add up. Millions were unaccounted for. Then I noticed it, a hidden ledger tucked behind an old folder labeled estate transfers. Maris had manipulated company accounts before I even knew she had access. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a premeditated strike. My phone buzzed. An anonymous tip confirmed she had done this before, with her ex-husband's $100 billion company. My pulse raced. I wasn't facing her first attack. I was facing her perfected pattern of destruction. I opened the ledger and froze at the first entry. Daniel's wedding fund had been siphoned overnight. $20 million gone. Transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. I traced the transactions carefully. Every transfer happened while I was distracted with wedding preparations. She'd planned this perfectly, using my love for my son against me. The realization made my blood run cold. I dug deeper, tracing transactions back months. Every large transfer Maris made mirrored her past schemes. Notes in the ledger referenced shell companies, offshore accounts, and coded aliases. A chill ran down my spine. She had learned from her first destruction. This was meticulous, cold, and calculated. I called my CFO, but Maris had already covered her tracks so well that even he hesitated. I felt trapped, helpless, but furious. I could almost see her smirk across the room, imagining me panicking. My phone pinged with an email I hadn't expected. Photos of Daniel signing documents I didn't authorize. Maris had manipulated him too. I studied each photo carefully. Daniel's signature appeared on loan agreements, stock transfers, property deeds. All fraudulent. all designed to strip me of everything I'd built. I forwarded everything to my attorney with a simple message. "We need to meet immediately. Bring your fraud specialist." Within hours, my legal team assembled. We began building a case that would destroy Maris's carefully constructed web of lies. I confronted Daniel, but his eyes were distant, clouded by Maris's influence. "I'm doing this for the family," he said, echoing her words. But I knew better. It was the same playbook she used on her first husband. I felt rage burn through me. She had poisoned him, turned him into a pawn, and he didn't even realize it. I needed allies fast. I reached out to private investigators who had worked on billion-dollar corporate fraud. Their first report chilled me. Maris had erased digital footprints, manipulated emails, and even staged fake meetings to frame me. Every second I hesitated, she gained more leverage. A knock at the door. Daniel stood there, envelope in hand. "You need to see this," he said. Inside were bank statements showing my entire company's emergency fund gone. $40 million vanished overnight. "How long have you known about this?" I asked quietly. Daniel couldn't meet my eyes. 2 weeks. Maris said you were hiding money from us. She said we deserved it. I arranged a meeting in my office with Maris. She walked in, calm, poised, the picture of innocence. "I'm just protecting my family," she said sweetly. I slammed the ledger on the desk. "Don't pretend this is about family. You siphoned millions and poisoned my son's mind." She smiled, almost bored. "You'll never stop me. I've done this before. You just don't understand how the game works." Every word was designed to unsettle me. My pulse pounded, but I couldn't let fear control me. I needed a plan, precise and ruthless. My assistant burst in. "Sir, the board received an anonymous tip. Maris has documents implicating you in corporate mismanagement." I realized she was playing the board like pieces on a chessboard. "Get my attorney on the phone," I said calmly. "Tell him we're filing criminal charges. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. Everything." Maris's smile faltered slightly. "You wouldn't dare. I'll destroy you publicly." "Try me," I replied coldly. I couldn't let her win. I activated my emergency protocols, froze company accounts, alerted my legal team, and began quietly gathering proof of every fraudulent transfer. Every call, email, and transaction would become ammunition. But Maris was unpredictable. That night, Daniel called, voice trembling. "I don't know who to trust anymore." I realized the emotional warfare had begun. She wasn't just stealing money. She was breaking family bonds. I had to be smarter, faster, and coldly strategic. At midnight, an unmarked package arrived at my door. Inside was a flash drive labeled, "Everything you've ever trusted is a lie." I plugged it into my secure computer immediately. What I found made my hands shake. Video recordings of Maris and Daniel planning every detail of their scheme. Conversations about manipulating me, stealing company funds, destroying my reputation. But the most damning evidence was a recording of Maris coaching Daniel. "Your father is weak. He loves you too much. Use that against him." I saved everything, backed it up in 3 separate locations. I stared at the flash drive, hands trembling. Every transaction Maris had manipulated was documented. Worse, there were videos of Daniel unknowingly signing off on fraudulent transfers. The depth of her planning made my blood run cold. She wasn't just attacking me. She was systematically dismantling my life, just as she had done with her first husband's $100 billion empire. One email caught my eye. Phase 2. Remove the heir from the will. She had planned to erase Daniel from inheritance long before his wedding. I realized her ultimate goal wasn't just money. She wanted complete control, total destruction of everything I'd built. She wanted to humiliate me, break me, leave me with nothing. I called my attorney at 3 in the morning. I have everything we need. Video, audio, financial records. She's finished. How solid is the evidence? He asked. Ironclad, I replied. She documented her own crimes. Her arrogance will be her downfall. We scheduled an emergency meeting for dawn. The next morning, the board called an emergency meeting. Maris arrived, elegant and calm, like nothing was wrong. She presented doctored financial reports, subtly implying I had mismanaged funds. Every board member looked uneasy. I realized she had preemptively spun the narrative to isolate me. My pulse raced, but I kept my composure. I had the flash drive. I just needed the right moment to strike. Just as she began to smile triumphantly, my phone buzzed. An insider tip revealed she had secretly transferred company stock into her personal accounts. I now had concrete proof. I stood slowly, connecting my laptop to the conference room screen. Before we continue, I think everyone needs to see something. Maris's confident expression flickered slightly. This is highly irregular. So is embezzling $40 million. I replied coldly. I pressed play. The room fell completely silent as Maris's voice filled the space, instructing Daniel to forge documents, manipulate accounts, destroy evidence. I called my private investigators again. Within hours, they confirmed it. Maris had shell companies, offshore accounts, and even a fake trust set up to claim ownership of critical assets. Daniel's name had been used without consent. I felt a mix of rage and urgency. Every hour she had control, she was rewriting my legacy. I had to act, but carefully. One wrong move, and she could disappear with everything. A text arrived from Daniel. She's threatening me. She said if I help you, I'll lose everything. I replied immediately. Meet me. Alone. I'll protect you, but you have to trust me now. 2 hours later, Daniel sat across from me in a secure location. He looked broken, exhausted, nothing like the arrogant man from the wedding. Tell me everything, I said gently. She said you were trying to cut me out, Daniel whispered. She said we needed to act first. I believed her. God, I believed every word. I had to reach Daniel before she fully controlled him. We met secretly in a safe location. I explained Maris's pattern, the $100 billion company she destroyed before, the shell accounts, the manipulation. Slowly, he began to see the truth. But the fear in his eyes told me how deep her psychological grip ran. She wasn't just after money. She wanted control, humiliation, dominance. He agreed to cooperate, but only if I had a plan to neutralize her completely. We discovered she had set up a backdoor in the company's systems. With access, she could transfer the remaining funds overnight. The countdown had begun. Can you testify against her? I asked. Daniel nodded slowly. If you promise to protect me legally. She's dangerous. You don't know what she's capable of. I know exactly what she's capable of, I replied. That's why we're going to destroy her completely. No mercy, no second chances. We spent the next 4 hours planning every detail of our counterattack. We acted fast. I froze all company transactions, secured legal injunctions, and informed law enforcement of the fraud in motion. Maris didn't know we were onto her yet. That night, I received an anonymous call from a former executive who had worked with her on the $100 billion scheme. She's predictable. She repeats her methods exactly. I can guide you. This was my opportunity to finally turn her own playbook against her. The next morning, Maris walked into my office, expecting submission. But I had already prepared a counter report, showing her entire operation and naming her as the perpetrator. Her face went pale, but she didn't speak. The real game was about to begin. Sit down, I said quietly. We have a lot to discuss. Maris remained standing. You have nothing. I opened my laptop, turned it toward her. I have everything. Every transaction, every shell account, every manipulation. It's over. Maris barged into my office, expecting fear. Instead, I calmly placed a thick folder on the table. Inside were all her fraudulent transactions, shell accounts, and evidence from her first $100 billion scheme. Her eyes flicked between the documents and me, disbelief painted across her face. How did you find all this? She whispered. I smiled coldly. You left breadcrumbs, just like last time. I just followed them. As she tried to grab the folder, Daniel appeared behind her. Step away from my life, Maris, he said firmly. She faltered. Her control over him shattered, but she wasn't done yet. You're both fools, she hissed. You think evidence matters? I'll spin this. I'll make you both look like the villains. The press loves a story about greedy men destroying innocent women. Try it, I replied. I've already contacted every major outlet with the full story. Your previous victim came forward too. Your pattern is exposed. Maris's confidence finally cracked completely. The next day, I leaked a carefully curated summary of Maris's actions to the press, framing it as corporate fraud and manipulation. Headlines exploded. Heir versus stepmother, multi-million-dollar scheme revealed. Investors panicked. Board members demanded answers. Maris, who had expected private submission, was now publicly cornered. She tried to spin the story, claiming family disputes, but every piece of evidence contradicted her lies. A journalist called with an urgent tip. Maris had secretly hired a hacker to destroy evidence. If we didn't act fast, everything could vanish overnight. I contacted law enforcement immediately. Within hours, they traced the hacker, intercepted the attempt. Maris's plan backfired completely. Her own digital footprint exposed her beyond repair. I filed a formal lawsuit combining corporate fraud, identity manipulation, and attempted destruction of evidence. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just a boardroom fight. It was a full legal and public takedown. The judge scheduled a hearing within 48 hours. I worked with our legal team and private investigators to trace the hacker. Within hours, we intercepted the attempt. Maris's plan backfired. Her own digital footprint exposed her beyond repair. I filed a formal lawsuit combining corporate fraud, identity manipulation, and attempted destruction of evidence. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just a boardroom fight. It was a full legal and public takedown. The judge scheduled a hearing within 48 hours. Maris's confident smirk faded as she realized she might lose everything, legally, financially, and socially. The courtroom was packed. Media filled the back rows. Board members sat stone-faced in the gallery. Daniel sat beside me, finally on the right side. I walked through the timeline methodically. Every email, every transaction, every manipulation. The judge listened intently, occasionally making notes. Maris's attorney tried to interrupt repeatedly. Objection, relevance, speculation. But the evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings don't lie. Bank statements don't lie. Her previous victim's testimony sealed her fate completely. The court hearing was intense. Maris tried to blame Daniel, my advisors, and even her own past failures on me. But I remained calm, walking through the timeline of her manipulation, showing every email, every transaction, and the video evidence. Daniel watched, his expression shifting from fear to relief. The judge, appalled by her deliberate pattern of deception, and the fact this mirrored her previous billion-dollar scheme, ruled immediately. Full restitution, removal from company access, and permanent financial monitoring. As she was escorted out of the courtroom, Maris muttered under her breath. You think this ends with money? It doesn't. I realized one final move might still be coming. But I was prepared. I'd learned from this battle. Never again would I let trust blind me to manipulation. Outside the courthouse, Daniel grabbed my arm. I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. I should have listened. I pulled him into a tight embrace. You're still my son. We'll rebuild together. Weeks later, I finalized changes to my will, removing Maris entirely and securing Daniel's inheritance under strict conditions. Company operations stabilized. Investors regained confidence. But the sweetest moment came quietly, a private conversation with Daniel. I was scared I'd lost everything, he said. I hugged him tightly. You didn't. We fought smart together. The final shock came through careful investigation. I discovered that Maris's first failed $100 billion scheme had a hidden partner, and that partner had been quietly watching our story unfold. They came forward publicly, corroborating everything, completely destroying any chance Maris had at a comeback. Maris ended up alone, exposed, and powerless. Her own arrogance and repeated pattern finally her undoing. Daniel and I rebuilt stronger than ever, a bond forged in betrayal but strengthened by justice. I closed my office door, looked at the city skyline, and whispered to myself, never underestimate what quiet people with everything to lose can do. The company flourished. Daniel learned humility and wisdom through pain. And I learned that sometimes the hardest battles are fought against those we love most.